Graduate Entry Medicine at the University of Warwick. Founded in the year 2000, it is one of the two OG graduate programs in England and notably is the largest graduate-only course in the UK. In 2022, 1,758 people applied, 479 of those made it to interview and 248 won an offer, giving you around a 1 in 7 chance of getting in from application to offer. My name is Marius. I'm a final year new clip-on sunglasses I'm a final year graduate medical student at Southampton, and in this video I'm going to tell you how I got into Warwick Graduate Medicine and review the evidence base behind getting in 2023. Alright, so 4 years ago when I was applying to graduate medicine in the UK, there were literally no good YouTube resources out there. Nonetheless, through some helpful advice I got through word of mouth, in my second year of applying I got 4 out of 4 interviews and managed to convert 2 of them into offers, and one of them indeed was at Warwick. So Warwick's medical school is actually 100% graduates, so it's 4 years of a bespoke graduate only program. So this compares to other graduate medical schools. How, I hear you ask? So on the graduate program at Southampton we do 2 years of a bespoke program, and then we're siphoned back into the medical school, to the rest of the medical school, and it's year 4. Oxford have the same setup as Southampton, whereas certain other schools do 1 year of a bespoke program and then you're lobbed in back in year 3 of the standard program, and these are places like Newcastle, Georges and Nottingham. Kings apparently do this 4-week intense introductory summer school, and then you just join the undergraduate course in its year 2, completely bypassing year 1. So you can obviously see how I've been spending all my time researching how these different courses are set up. So Warwick is one of the only schools with 4 years with no reintegration into a sort of standard 5-year stream, and I think there are 2 main positives to that. So on these different streams you often have different styles of teaching, but generally graduate programs are taught slightly differently to undergraduate. They take advantage of more sort of small group learning environments in graduate courses compared to more didactic sort of lecture-based learning for the undergraduates. And from what I've read in the medical education scientific literature, the reason they do this is because they see graduate medics as more sort of adult learners, and a small group learning environment is more conducive to better progress for adult learners. But because of the differences between how graduate medical school is taught compared to undergraduate medical school, it can sometimes create a bit of a disconnect between the streams, with graduates having certain strengths over the undergraduates and vice versa. From my experience meeting the undergraduates after we've been reintegrated with them, a lot of them just have a bit more sort of niche biomedical knowledge, perhaps because they've started from basics. So the second benefit I see to travelling through only with graduates is the fact that you won't see people that are at the same career level as you, that are much younger, and maybe you'll be less likely to develop the perception that you're somehow behind other people and behind your friends. Going to a medical school that is fully graduates, it's graduate only, that's going to mean you're shielded from this for at least 4 years, and you won't see people that are at the same career level as you that are much younger until you get to sort of foundation year 1, which by that time will have, you know, full pay restoration, so we'll have a bit of money in the pocket, so it won't even matter. So other aspects of the course setup that are probably worth mentioning are the fact that for the first year and a half you learn in small groups in sort of a PBL format, a problem-based learning format, and then gradually as you move through year 2 you increase the amount of clinical learning you're doing, so the time you spend in hospitals and in GP practices, general practices, that's right. So I mentioned this quite a lot in my other videos, but I think the small group learning environment combined with the fact that they accept graduates with a range of different degrees, not just science and not just biomed degrees, I think this is a combination that's going to really create some interesting discussion, because people have different perspectives based on their backgrounds and their academic interests, and when you're discussing one of these PBL cases, a clinical case, people are going to have interesting things to say. So whereas the first couple of years, the preclinical years, are based at the university primarily, years 3 and 4, so your clinical years, are based out at different hospital trusts. So a trust is just a group of hospitals in a particular locality. For Warwick Uni, these are in sort of Coventry, Nuneaton, Rugby and the Warwick area. So the last thing I want to talk about in regards to the course itself is about how they teach their anatomy. So generally anatomy is taught using either dissection or prosection. Dissection being where in groups you're assigned a cadaver and you're involved in the actual physical cutting of the specimen to reveal particular tissues, and prosection being where sort of professional anatomists have already dissected the cadaver to reveal certain structures, and you just come along and just observe the particular tissue or organ that the anatomy faculty want you to appreciate. So Southampton fix all the tissues in formaldehyde, so you go in and it's got that smell that makes you hungry, which is slightly weird. But Warwick use this thing called plastination, and reading a little bit about it, it looks like they somehow replace the water and fat in the tissue with like a polymer like silicone or polyester. I mean, I have no idea how this works, but I think my point is this is a form of prosection rather than dissection, which has certain benefits. So it looks like Warwick really pride themselves on their anatomical teaching, so it's probably something that's worth bringing up if they ask you why you want to go to Warwick in particular. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a better way to teach like a large group of medical students anatomy, because you can just come along, look at the structure, remember what it looks like, and get out of there, rather than spending hours trying to dissect like this piece of tissue that you need to appreciate, and you have no idea where it is, and you're just like, I mean, there's no doubt that prosection is more efficient than dissection. Dissection could be argued is maybe it's more spiritually enlightening, because I mean, there's nothing weirder than cutting into a cadaver, a dead human. So the only place that I've seen that does dissection is actually Bart's Graduate Medicine. So yeah, take that as you may. So moving on to what degree you need. So Warwick state that you require a 2-1 in any degree to apply for this course, and it can be in any subject. They also note that if you have a 2-2 in your undergraduate degree, you may still be able to apply to this program if you complete a master's degree, again in any subject. Now the Marius method dictates that we have to try and corroborate everything we read with concrete statistical data from freedom of information requests. So we go onto a website called whatdotheyknow.com, and we send the University of Warwick a request for whatever information it is that we want to try and appreciate. So in terms of degree class, to understand whether or not I'm going to need a first to get in, or if a 2-1's just fine, we need to ask the question, for all the candidates that won an interview in the last academic cycle, how many of those people had firsts, how many of them had 2-1s, how many of them had 2-2s, how many of them had masters, etc, etc. So for the 2021 cohort, we find that there were similar numbers of people who'd been predicted or achieved the first to those who had actually just got a 2-1. So I now know that my 2-1 in biomedical sciences from Durham is probably going to get me an offer. It's not going to disqualify me from getting an offer. So we can also appreciate from this freedom of information request that if you do get a 2-2 and you only have a bachelor's degree, you're definitely going to be rejected pre-interview. However, if you go ahead and get yourself a master's in any degree, then that's going to sort of mask that 2-2, and you have every chance of getting in after that. So we can also see from this that there are a few people with PhDs, so a handful of people for whom, you know, sort of 7 years of study wasn't enough, and they fancy a little another 4 years on a graduate medical program. In terms of degree type, so my freedom of information request revealed that there was an eclectic mix of graduates in many different disciplines. You know, there's people that got in with accountancy degrees, history degrees, sports science degrees, physiotherapy degrees. Yeah, so there's also no A-level or GCSE requirements for Warwick Graduate Medicine, and yeah, you know how I feel about creating a cohort of graduate medics with different academic interests. So one last thing to say about this, like a lot of people ask me sort of what degree they should do in preparation for graduate medicine, and I always just say just go with your heart, because it doesn't really matter. Yeah, my advice is always just like, yeah, don't do biomed if you don't want to do it, just sort of follow whatever academic specialty that takes your interest at the time, because yeah, although initially the sort of biomed crew are a little bit on top maybe at the start, you know, eventually it does even out. And yeah, in the med-ed literature, they've actually studied this. And yeah, what they found was that sort of prior degree subject and class of degree was not related to success on a graduate medicine program. So yeah, if you're interested, I don't know, as an 18-year-old in English literature, but you think maybe in the future you might want to be a doctor, just go and do an English literature degree. You'll still qualify for certain graduate medical schools in the United Kingdom. The evidence suggests that you won't do any worse in that degree than someone that's gone and done a biomedical science degree. So once you've got your minimum of a 2 2-1 in any subject, or you've got your 2-2 completely obscured by a tactical masters, you're going to want to go and get some work experience. So what it boils down to is the fact that you need to provide certificates showing that you have done 70 hours of work experience over the last 3 years. So it turns out that shadowing may only represent 20 of these 70 hours, and they're explicit in saying that the rest of the 50 hours need to be made up by direct hands-on care. So I definitely think this dissuades a lot of people that are unwilling or unable for some reason to get those 50 hours of direct hands-on work experience in. So realistically though, if you start now, we're in May, so you've got 5 months to get sort of 50 hours of work experience. That's like 5 shifts. That's a week's worth of shifts, and you've got 5 months to do it. So we can get this. So yeah, it is annoying, but if you want to unlock this university for yourself, and this uni like Warwick Graduate Medicine, this could be a great opportunity for you to get a place. Like, it's a big cohort. Once you get to interview, the chances are like 1 in 2. So if you can unlock this university by getting over the line with the work experience, then it's definitely going to be worth it. So addressing the 50-hour thing first. So personally, I got my direct hands-on care by applying to be on a healthcare bank. So I didn't need any prior experience for this. I was like 22 doing this. So I applied to be on the bank at a group of psychiatric hospitals called the Priory. So they've got these sites across many places in the UK. Oddly enough, one of my colleagues on graduate medicine at Southampton also worked at the Priory, but at a different site. And yeah, you didn't need any experience in healthcare roles at all to apply for this role. And although it took quite a while to get the actual job offer into my inbox, I think it took a couple of months in the end. Once I had the job secured, it was perfect because I could just log onto this app on my phone, and I could literally just book a shift whenever I wanted. Yeah, it was pretty much the perfect way to secure, in quite a non-committal way, the opportunity to accumulate enough hours that I would need to get into Warwick Graduate Medicine and other places like Nottingham. So whilst you're going through your days of work experience to qualify for somewhere like Warwick, what I think is really, really useful is to keep a work experience reflection diary. So this is what I did. I had penned in a little notebook the sort of 8 key personality traits that they were going to assess at interview. So things like communication, leadership, integrity, resilience, etc., etc. And after my days of work, after my sort of 8-hour shifts, I just sit with this little diary and just think, did I observe any of those things in action today? Or in fact, did I myself demonstrate any of these personality traits? So did I display some sort of good communication? So can I create a story based on something that happened in that day, where I demonstrate the fact that I have good communication skills, or one of the other key personality traits? So reflecting on my own sort of graduate medicine application journey, this particular thing, this piece of preparation I did, was honestly one of the most effective things. This, combined with my preparation for the UCAT, was what I think got me into medical school. If you're interested in this, and if you're convinced by what I'm saying, I've actually put about 30 hours into a small guide that takes you through the 8 key personality traits, offers my reflections on all of them to give you ideas for your own reflections, and give you the template to use to create really convincing stories that you can use in your own interviews. Yeah, I honestly think this is sick and so useful. It's something that I wish I had when I was applying. And yeah, it's the same price as a McChicken sandwich meal, or probably even cheaper actually if you're going for a large, and a milkshake, which I normally do. So it's cheaper than that, and God knows it's a lot more nutritious. So hit the link in the description if that sounds like a bit of you. But in terms of the other 20 hours of sort of shadowing that you need to get yourself to the 70 hours of work experience in total. So I tried a couple of different ways to get shadowing experience. One way, I went officially through a medical school website. So I think I went through St George's at the time. The other way I did it was by calling in favours. So I don't have anyone medical in my family, but throughout your undergrad, you talk to people, you say, I'm interested in doing graduate medicine, and they say, oh, you know, my dad's a urological surgeon at UCL, like, you know, if you want to chat to him or whatever, then feel free, I can put you in touch. And at a certain point, when you find out that you actually need work experience to get into some of these graduate medical schools, you just start calling in favours. So comparing the 2 methods of getting this shadowing experience, so I'd strongly recommend the latter, because the former literally took me about 6 months, and I didn't even enjoy it. It was in random departments that I wasn't necessarily interested in. I wanted some surgical shadowing experience. I think there's just so much red tape in trying to get someone who's non-medical onto the wards for a bit of shadowing. Whereas yeah, I remember asking my old dissertation supervisor if he had any sort of leads for where I could get some shadowing experience. experience, and he literally called up some immunologist at a hospital locally, and the next week I was in shadowing in a clinic. So yeah, if you can call in a couple favours, then in my opinion that's probably the best way to do it. But yeah, make sure you, when you finish the days, just get a certificate, a signed certificate saying that you've done that day, and logging the hours that you've done as well, and just collect it in a little portfolio. Alright, so now the wheels are in motion for getting our work experience. We need to think about the entrance exam, and we need to start thinking about the UCAT. So the most reliable way of working out what score we're going to need to qualify for Warwick Graduate Medicine is by looking at the previous cohort. We need to find out of all the people that got an interview last year, who got the lowest score. What we would have had to do back in my day was go on to whatdotheyknow.com and ask Warwick University directly what this score was. However, I'm very reassured to find the fact that certain graduate medical schools are actually posting this information now directly onto their website. So these are the lowest UCAT scores from the previous 5 years. Don't worry about the average, don't worry about the highest. In 2022, it was pretty much the same as 2021, so the lowest score was 2660. So if you're getting around 2700, then you're probably going to qualify for Warwick Graduate Medicine. My personal score was 2960, so I knew that I was probably going to get an interview at Warwick. So the two other things that are probably worth mentioning in terms of the UCAT and Warwick are the fact that Warwick require you to have achieved higher than the cohort mean in verbal reasoning. For example, in 2022, applicants would have needed to score above 570 in that section. And yeah, personally, I hated verbal reasoning. Honestly, it was the one that I just couldn't improve on very easily at all. Yeah, like luckily I got around 650, I think, in that section, but yeah, I did not enjoy practicing that section, and I hated the actual section in the UCAT itself. I have seen some evidence in the med ed literature to suggest that sort of your score in the verbal reasoning section of the UCAT is proportional to your success as a doctor. I can kind of see that in the fact that there is a lot of reading and comprehension and assimilation of information that you need to do as a doctor, and particularly as a medical student as well. So to complete this section on the UCAT, we need to look at the situational judgment test and whether or not Warwick used the situational judgment test in their shortlisting of candidates. The best way to assess this is to ask them, of those who got interviews last year, how many of them got a band 1, band 2, band 3, band 4, because that allows them to maintain anonymity in the cohort, but it also gives us an idea of like the sort of spread of people who are getting different bands. Mainly people got band 1s and band 2s, but still some people got band 3s, and a couple, less than 5 but more than 0, got band 4s. So at this point we've got our degree, we've got our work experience, we've done well enough in the UCAT. To be honest, right now you should be gassed. The fact is, there's a good chance that you'll get to interview now, and once you're at the interview stage, you've got a roughly 1 in 2 chance of getting an offer, so 50%. We're down from 1 in 7 to 1 in 2. My view was that winning an offer out of an interview was solely based on my performance on the day at the interview. It wasn't going to consider anything I'd done previously in my academic sort of credentials. Essentially, all I need to do now is rank in the top sort of 260-ish candidates on the day, and I'll get an offer. So in terms of the interview itself, is classically conducted in multiple mini interview format. So this is a method of interviewing prospective medical students that was introduced after they realized there were such low attrition rates at medical school. And by that I mean, once you get into medical school, the number of people that actually drop out and don't become doctors is so small. So once you're in, you're basically on a treadmill to becoming a doctor. So it was shown that potentially the multiple mini interview was a more reliable way of picking medical students that would ultimately be successful doctors. So when I was doing my finals just recently, I realised how similar the multiple mini interviews were to actually the finals OSCE and to any OSCE during medical school. So yeah, I couldn't help but feel the sort of comforting symmetry of the fact that I'd done one of these assessments to get in, and now I was doing one of these similar assessments to actually just get out. Honestly, they are just so nerve-wracking. I hate to say it, but they are so nerve-wracking. You've got to try and impress 8 to 10 different people and 8 to 10 different things. So you've got to be on job performing at every single station. Like, yeah, I remember going up to Warwick for my interview, journeying up to the Midlands on the train. It was a grey day. Once you get to Warwick station, you then have to get a bus to the medical school. Yeah, I remember going up to the top deck of the bus and seeing another girl who was dressed quite smart. So I made some small talk to try and calm my nerves, but then just realised that she was pretty sick. So yeah, maybe even made me feel more nervous. So from memory, once you get there, you sort of go upstairs into this little foyer, you hand in your proof of work experience certificates and whatever else, identification documents, etc. You're then put into groups with your competitors, and then you go single file down to the little room where the assessment's going to take place. So everyone's sort of in the same room, and the stations are demarcated by those little like freestanding office partitioning things. And yeah, these are anything but soundproof, so expect to hear your competitors chatting about their experiences and giving their answers on the stations, and try not to get thrown off by it. Essentially, you're given a station to start on, and you stand with your back to it. And there'll be a little piece of A4 paper with the briefing. When the buzzer goes off, you turn around, read the thing, another buzzer goes off like a minute later, and then you go in and do whatever it is that they tell you to do. Obviously, it's very important that I don't share specific things from my personal interview, but there are certain things that it would be sensible for you to prepare for every single graduate medical school interview. So, for example, be solid on your personal trait questions, perhaps using the framework that I've written if you want. Also be solid on your answers for why medicine and why Warwick. I have rambled on just about long enough on the topic of Warwick graduate medicine. So to sum up what I've said so far, Warwick run potentially the largest graduate only medical program in the country. To qualify, you'll need a 2-1 in any subject, or indeed a 2-2 plus master's degree. You'll need to have acquired 70 hours of work experience, and crucially be able to provide signed certificates to prove that. You'll need to take the UCAT and get around 2,700, and the situational judgment test probably doesn't matter. You then turn up to the multiple mini interview looking fresh and feeling confident in the knowledge that your chances at this stage are fantastic. I really hope this was useful to you. Feel free to subscribe to get me to 1,000. But otherwise, yeah, take care and best of luck in your Warwick graduate medicine application. Cheers.